Laura Amendola has been a certified financial planner for over 20 years and specializes in working with widows. She is the founder of Wealth Care for Widows, a unique financial planning process that she developed that supports a widow's entire journey toward recovery and renewal. Her actions stem from her own experience at 17 when she lost her father in a car accident, and she watched her mother struggle with challenges personally and financially that are common to all widows. She authored the financial book, Suddenly Alone, 3 Steps for Your Financial Clarity as a Recent Widow in 2015. So welcome Laura Amendola to the stage.
Oh, I could stay here all day. So, oh my gosh, look how many of you actually came back for the last speaker, who's going to talk about finance. Because I know that you would probably be rather volunteering for a Ritz Carlton root canal. Seriously though, a lot of people ask me, what is Wealth Care for Widows? So I'm a financial advisor with Raymond James Financial, and my Wealth Care for Widows is a signature process that I developed specifically to work with widows. It's a 6-step process. There's power of 3. You guys are going to learn I love the power of 3. So there's 3 steps in conquering your financial fear and 3 steps in building your resistance or your resilience. Let's see here. Okay, so it's a little off. All right. So as Carolyn was saying, I guess I'm qualified to stand up here and talk with all of you. I have been a certified financial planner for over 20 years. I have a bachelor's in finance. I'm a total math nerd. I started right out of college and as a stockbroker and worked my way up to branch manager and actually owner of a private wealth management office of Raymond James. I can talk to you about just about everything and anything financial. I have every investment license pretty much there is, including insurance. I'm the author of Suddenly Alone, 3 Steps to Clarity for Your as a Recent Widow. And I am, if you haven't figured it out, founder of Wealth Care for Widows. But I'm not a widow. I'm the daughter of a widow. And that picture is totally 70s. The lady in the bottom corner, she is rocking the Charlie's Angel hairdo there. So, so that is me in the middle. I'm an only child, and this is one of the few pictures I have of all 3 of us, because as you can see, my father is the one with the camera. My mom didn't take a lot of photos. And as Carolyn said, my dad was killed in a car accident when I was 17. It was a 1-car accident. If you live in Florida, you know how in certain months it can get really, really foggy. Can't even see your hand. There is a light at that intersection now, but there didn't used to be. And you had to either turn left or turn right. He did not. He did not see the sign, and he went through and actually went into a pond. I didn't know this until really only about 5 years ago, that the actual cause of death was drowning. My mom got the officer at the door Sunday morning, and ironically, the pond was next to a church, and that's how he was found. So the positive in that is that God truly was calling him. Okay. So people ask me, you know, why am I passionate about working with widows? Well, obviously my mother. The journey back then, which, you know, being 17, I didn't realize everything that she was going through. I do remember the first year I called her every day. But it was really all about surviving. And it's going to be 30 years, November 13th of this year. So before we get into fear, I do want to tell you a little bit about my dad, because I think you need to know that so that you understand my style as I come at it with this signature talk. My dad was first sergeant of artillery in the Army. And this was really great. He wasn't that militant style. He was truly the friendliest leader you would ever know. And he could probably sharpshoot you very quickly, so that was also comforting. I did have a normal childhood. I had Barbies and dollhouses, but my dad was so cool that I also had a tank to play on. This was really good because, having shown you that picture of me just a minute ago and being utterly vulnerable up here, I will share with you that I was severely bullied when I was in middle school. And my dad was always there for me. Countless nights, really for about 2 years, he would sit in my room with me when I was protesting, not wanting to go to school the next day. And he always said a certain thing to me. In a very loving manner, he would share with me, and he would say, Laura, people rose up from the hells of war, and they walked out. And if they can do that, you can do this. And so I did. That's what we're going to do today. And so bear with me as I come from that approach. I'm kind of fighting a battle because on my watch, you are going to rise up and you are going to walk out of this war. Okay? But fear. So right now, many of you may be feeling stuck. And I ask widows, what keeps you stuck? And what would you say? Can somebody just shout something out? Like, what keeps you stuck? Overwhelmed, okay. So the fear of being overwhelmed for the rest of your life. Sometimes people will say loneliness, and I'll say, okay, the fear of being lonely for the rest of your life. Unhappiness, the fear of being unhappy for the rest of your life. And I think this is a very clear distinction that we need to make early on, because fear really is uncertainty. Some of you may know this. False expectations appearing real. Looks like our slides are a little distorted, so bear with me. Your fear thoughts are not reality. They are simply uncertainty, and that is what we have to tackle. Grief is a real trickster. Grief can make every moment seem gigantic and unbearable in every way. But I'm up here to tell you, if you haven't figured it out over the past 2.5 days, that you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not an idiot because you can't figure out your investment statement. I can't either. And you are going to be okay. But fear from uncertainty will get you locked up. And sometimes you don't even know you're locked up. And I think it was Carolyn who was talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. For a widow, it goes back to the basics: air, food, water, shelter. Where am I going to live? And there's an interesting statistic. 70% of widows change financial advisors within the first year. And advisors will ask me, well, why is this? What is it that you do different? And why does that happen? And I'll say, because you don't go back to the basics. Instead, you go in, they start talking about portfolio allocations. You've got 60% here, you've got 35% there. They start talking about dynamic withdrawal strategies or the standard deviation of risk management. And all you're hearing is wah, 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 wah. Okay? So that's why we have to go back to the basics. And I want to go back and just remind all of you what you've heard over the last 2 days, because it does bleed over into your finances. And it's basically when all those triggers, those emotions come up, they are meant to be felt. I think Dr. Mycino was talking about that this morning. You've probably heard the saying, you got to feel them to heal them. So I want to give you a little tip. Acknowledging the emotion, this comes from my coactive coaching training that I did specifically so I could take a deeper dive into conversations with widows. Acknowledging how you're feeling. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm lonely. By getting it out and naming it out loud, it will drain it of its power. Just saying it out loud. It's amazing. So it releases the power and it opens up the space within to help process what's happening in your mind and your heart. Okay? It allows you to recenter. You stay open to your life so that you can grieve, which is a natural part of the process, and you truly begin to recover and heal. So looks a little distorted there. So going back to the battle approach, right? So how do we slay this evil villain? Okay, how do we protect you, the hero in this battle, in this story? And we conquer uncertainty. What power do we need? Well, as you've heard for the past 2 days, it all starts with knowledge. Knowledge about your loss, your emotions, your finances, and ultimately your life going forward. And knowledge truly is power over grief. But what's interesting is that we find that it's kind of the forgotten piece in grief counseling. Financial clarity just isn't really being covered, which is odd. Because especially if you were here last year, you heard Dr. Kathleen Reel talk about the different statistics and so forth, but there is a strong connection between understanding your finances and your emotional recovery. If you're grieving with or facing a lack of financial information or uncertainty, this is going to cause anxiety that is going to paralyze you. It will weaken anyone's emotional healing. Grief and loss do not discriminate based on tax brackets or income levels. I've seen widows with millions fall into what we call the bag lady syndrome or the scarcity mindset. And if you are standing in the scarcity mindset, you're going to be locked up. So here's what I'm here to tell you. You are capable of handling your financial affairs. You do not need a financial degree. You simply need to stay involved. A lot of people will try to delegate this one out. You know, they'll work with a grown son or a brother. You've got to stay involved, or I promise you it will catch up with you years later. The more quickly you understand your financial situation, the less anxious you will likely feel, which will in turn contribute to your emotional healing. Simple addition and subtraction is all you need to begin moving forward. Basically, you want to get an idea of what it's going to take to maintain your standard of living with as few disruptions as possible. And everything is figure-outable. You know, sometimes I talk and I'm like, gosh, are they going to be interested? Because this really isn't rocket science. But when you're in the fog or you're still stuck, it feels like rocket science. Okay? So there is one key, though, that we need to unlock this power of knowledge. Organization. Uh-oh. Okay, make sure you're on your toes. Grief causes confusion. I forget whose talk it was, maybe it was this morning, it was talking about taming the tension. Remember that? I think that was this morning. Chaos breeds chaos. You must tame the chaos. So whether it's your finances or your emotions or what you're eating or not exercising, if you apply some organization to that, as Tara was saying, plan ahead, that will happen. It is an act of structure and strength. It is a choice, just like exercise and diet. This is where the power of all knowledge starts, and I promise you it truly is as simple as that. Get organized. So let's go back to our villain, fear, and the one question I get asked the most. Does anybody know what it is? From widows. Do I have enough? And do I have enough has some close cousins. Am I going to make it? Can I afford to keep my house or my car? Do I need to go back to work? Or can I even afford to have lunch with my friends? Until you get this question answered, you're going to stay stuck. You stay stuck in what I call that cul-de-sac of grief. If you're not knowing what decisions to make for your future, you're not going to be able to power your renewal. You're not going to know which road to get out of on for that cul-de-sac. All right, so back to, there's 3 steps to conquering financial fear. And we are going to go through this quickly because I only have about 30 minutes. So if there's a slide that speaks to you, I do have it printed out and you can ask me later. Let's get started. Know your numbers. Run your numbers. Balance your numbers. It's as simple as that. 3 steps. Know, run, balance. Know your numbers covers papers and people. Run your numbers is stabilizing your cash flow. And balance is connecting your financial snapshots. Okay, let's do step 1. Know your numbers. This is going to cultivate clarity because filling in the blanks will stabilize your cash flow. And it'll give you clarity about your changed circumstances so you can make financial decisions yourself on what options are most meaningful to you. Not your grandson, not your uncle, not the nice man at church. You. You must stay involved. That's the secret. You can have help, but you got to stay involved and make those decisions. This is going to leave you feeling incredibly empowered because all your information is going to be organized into the following 3 worksheets. Power of 3 again. Income and expense, net worth statement, key contacts, and financial documents. This is quickly going to pull together all your information so you are knowledgeable, you have that power about running your numbers. Okay, so the first worksheet is the income and expense sheet. Completing this worksheet is the single most important step to help reduce stress and worry as a widow. This is where we start with all clients, actually. But to a widow, I think it was Tara who was talking about awareness, and someone mentioned their Fitbit. This is your financial Fitbit. All decisions such as investments, housing, are going to revolve around this worksheet because it identifies any gap that you have between your income and your expenses. We got to know what we've got to cover, okay? And maybe you have excess, and that's fine too, but we need to know what that is so that you don't begin to overspend. Obviously, you're going to reevaluate your financial position with your changed circumstances, and it's going to project the amount of income you can reasonably expect, spending patterns, balance expenses with income, and also support any debt reduction if it's needed, or savings growth for the future, for retirement eventually. The net worth worksheet, this is going to summarize your present financial situation. It's pretty basic. Again, you got to go back to the basics, but you got to identify the assets and debts in an organized manner and not scattered or creating overwhelm. So its purpose is to identify what you own and what you owe, simple addition and subtraction, you get your net worth, and this will allow you to see any excess or shortfalls. Okay? Key financial documents. People often think this is the easiest one with all the checklists, and it kind of is, but it's one of the most important because it's going to, especially if you work with an advisor, things are going to pop off of this that's going to let us know if you need any type of advanced planning. Its purpose is to organize your legal documents, your entities. Sometimes people realize, they didn't know they own so many rental properties and they have 7 different corporations, okay? It's going to give you insight for insurance and risk management, estate planning, and of course we always want to mitigate taxes during your lifetime. Okay, so tips for knowing your numbers. If you are a recent widow, you're not going to start with financial. You're going to start with steadying your ship. Start off by making your bed every morning. Think about it. This is what all of our servicemen are taught immediately to get them through battle and combat. And in a few minutes, I'll tell you the book that comes from. Clean your kitchen sink every evening. There's also a book for that. I'll tell you that one was a lifesaver for me when a Category 4 hurricane hit my home. it was total chaos, but that one area stabilized me. Learn the Power of Rhythm and Routine Daily Habits Worksheet. It's out there on the table. This comes from Cheryl Richardson's book, The Art of Extreme Self-Care. Very, very powerful to make your bed, clean your sink, and then you get to figure out what you're going to put in the middle and just start doing that. Once you've stabilized that, then you can jump to some of the financial. You're going to make a list of important bills. You're going to begin with sticky stacks on the dining room table or somewhere else, some flat area. You don't need to start making an entire financial filing system. Just use a flat surface. We have our Life Buoy blog. Again, I don't have a lot of time today, so I made sure it was back there, and stickies so that you can see what are essential items, what are items that you're going to use later on. Put the essential docs that are on that blog in a travel bag. A lot of widows, they get scattered. They're somewhere, and it's somewhere important, and they're in a meeting, and they find they didn't bring that one birth certificate. And it just throws them. Like, they feel dumb. They're like, oh, how could I have forgotten that? You guys are so hard on yourselves. So what I tell people, we use something like this. You want something that you can just keep at home, put it in the car, take it in on the appointment, put it back in the car, take it back into the house. Everything that you need essentially is in one place. The other tip that we have here is using a spiral notebook. Simple. Go to Walgreens. Easy. Put everything down in one place. This will calm your mind. You may not remember what so-and-so said by the time you get home, but it's here. You wrote it down. Or have a friend write it down who went with you. Okay? To filling out the income and expense sheet, a tip is going to the tax return. You can look on Schedule B for dividends and interest, see what income's coming in, and also a checkbook. Although not everyone has a checkbook anymore. If you don't have passcodes, you may have to go to the bank and ask them to print out statements for you. That's the easiest way to begin filling in that worksheet. And of course, as most of you all know, take no radical action or make any irrevocable decisions about the first year regarding finances. Okay? If you're a widow still facing uncertainty, so maybe you're in year 4, year 6, but you're still just kind of stuck, you don't really know what's going on, here are the tips that widows have shared that works best for them. Start with reorganizing the workspace area to reflect you. It might have been his filing system. We now need to make it yours and the area so that you're comfortable with doing your financial stuff there. Redo the file folders in your own handwriting. Just get a whole new set of files and just write it on, take the stuff out, put it in the new file. You're going to be touching the files. You're going to learn what's in them. It's just a natural process. And then alphabetize it. He may have had it in a certain way because he has something in the back that he didn't really touch that often. We need to alphabetize it so that you can quickly get to it. House, life insurance, things like that, okay? And then if you are still kind of feeling stuck, it may also be because you're not making the intentional effort to take care of yourself. So setting those reoccurring self-care appointments are very important, okay? These are the, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So true. Books we recommend to help. Here's Make Your Bed. That's by Admiral McRaven. He does a lot of college graduation, and he talks about this very book. The Art of Extreme Self-Care. Sync Reflections by the Fly Lady. Wonderful. Taming the Chaos. 1 Year to an Organized Financial Life by Regina Leeds. I actually use this book when I put posts on Facebook for weekly ideas and financial tips. Wonderful book. The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Wonderful. The approach of Japanese decluttering. Okay? All right, so if you've done step 1, you're going to have clarity. You've completed your financial snapshots. You're moving forward. You're bringing your finances into balance. You're knowing where you're starting from and where you need to adjust later on. But best of all, you're moving towards helping your money worries fade. You're not in that fear of, do I have enough? Okay? You've gotten organized. You've taken that first step. So step 2 is running your numbers. This is going to cultivate confidence. It's going to answer that question of, do I have enough? Here, you need to somewhat give yourself permission to not be all-knowing when it comes to your finances. You can just simply pull the numbers off of the worksheets and plug them in. I'm going to tell you that the easiest way to do this is to work with a cash flow planner. So sometimes that's called a certified financial planner, your current advisor. But no matter what the outcome of the software, positive or negative, you are standing in certainty. We're out of uncertainty and that fear that was paralyzing us. And then the mind can begin to heal because it will naturally begin to create solutions for you once you know and run your numbers. So you can run it yourself if you're a math nerd like me and you have the software. You can take them to your current financial advisor, and I just want to remind people that just almost every financial advisor has this software now, and it's so powerful. And it's what you pay them to do. And they may not realize that they need to go back to the basics with you. They may have done that with yourself and your husband, 7 years ago, maybe when you retired, something like that. And they know that you're okay, but they're not going back to the basics and letting you get your hands on your numbers and you seeing that you're okay. And if you don't have an advisor, obviously, you can run them with us. Okay? It's going to open you up to the learning. A lot of times people will run the numbers and they'll go, oh, yeah, my advisor said I was good. So would you really look at the reports? Really do take a look at them. Because what you need to understand are the results. You need to understand your U shape. So when widows come to me and they're like, I think I'm doing okay. I'm about 8 years in. But, my kids are heading to college and, I don't know if I'm going to have enough. I think I have enough. I did have life insurance, but I just don't know. And I said, well, does anybody ever run your numbers? And there are software out there that'll tell you, it's like a little dial, and it'll say, 95% success rate, that kind of thing. But I really think it's powerful where you can see your chart. So I want to give you a couple examples of this. So the chart on the left is a 46-year-old widow who is receiving Social Security survivor benefits. But her kids are going to be coming out of high school, all right? And she really wasn't sure, should I start a job? Do I have enough? And what we found is that she did have enough. Yes, her withdrawal rate on the assets is going to be a little higher until she gets out of that, what we call the blackout period, until she can take Social Security benefits, widow's benefits at age 60. Her kids' benefits, of course, end after high school. And I know Carolyn is lobbying to try to change that for college students. That's one of her big things. So she didn't realize, though, that, okay, I will be okay. Now, hers was actually a little steeper of a U, it was more of a deep V, and in that chart, we determined that if she decided to do something that was fulfilling to her, and she grossed about $30,000 a year, she could make that look even better, okay? But until she actually filled out those worksheets, ran her numbers, she had no idea. She thought she was the chart on the right. The money's going to stop, and I'm just going, if I don't go back to work or I don't sell this home, I'm just going to plummet into the abyss, okay? So run your numbers. Every advisor has the software now, okay? Remember that all financial questions are answerable. Tips for step 2, running your numbers. Okay, make sure you stress test. Run those numbers out to age 100. Use realistic tax, inflation, and performance numbers. If your advisor's using something more than 8%, it's too high. We want to stress test. We want to make sure that we're not in an overly aggressive portfolio. So try to run the numbers with no more than 6%. Okay, that's also going to help you determine that gap. On that U chart, if we find that you need 14% a year, it's really not realistic that you're annually going to make 14% a year. But 7% a year is more realistic. So maybe, okay, go back part-time and you make the other 7%. Or reduce expenses so that you're able to live on that 7%, okay? But you'll know your number. And as things change, right, 4 or 5 years down the road, you go, you know, I am ready to move them out of the school zone that I'm in. Oh, well, what's the new alternative that you're looking at? Go back, plug in the numbers, see if your chart's okay, and you're good. All right, so don't freak out if you're that chart that, you know, just kind of went into the abyss there. That often happens because sometimes if you've received life insurance money, stuff like that, or you're really in a very large home, you know, we're just trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do here? Maybe we do need to reduce expenses. Maybe we need to supplement what you are making, you know, at your nursing job with some assets. Well, how much do you need? You need 3, 4, 7, 14? Okay. Changing the allocations. You know, maybe all the money is sitting in a savings account earning next to nothing. Well, how much do you need? Never take on any more risk than you have to. And then the other alternatives are if you got to go back to work, or you do need to move into, you know, closer to family so that they can help you. How does that work? Just feed it into that chart. Okay, so even if the results turn out to be negative, you are now empowered because you know. You are standing in certainty and not in fear. When that happens, your mind stands in reality and it gets creative. It just naturally does it. It just, you know, it's kind of like when you acknowledge something and you're driving around and all of a sudden the billboards are like popping out at you. Those alternatives that are most fulfilling to you will pop out. And that's when the forward healing comes. It's not rocket science. It's so simple. And I've even given you a purple happy pen to fill out your worksheets. Okay, so if you've done step 2, you should be feeling more confident. And all wealth is attracted to clarity. Emotional wealth, physical wealth, spiritual wealth, and financial wealth. When you begin to see clearly what resources you have, you can build a blueprint of what you want. You start to enter renewal. You can decide what's most meaningful to you despite the changed circumstances. And you can tackle those big decisions more easily and with less stress because you ran your numbers 6 months ago. And now this new opportunity has come up and you're like, oh yeah, that fits. So this is going to allow you to discover what you want in your life as you move forward resiliently. I realized back then what my dad was telling me about, you know, they rose up and they walked out. He was teaching me resilience. I think that's why I'm drawn to working with widows. Okay, step 3, balance your numbers. This is going to cultivate comfort. And I think Carolyn's is similar to this, where she has clarity, confidence, connection. Yeah, I agree with that. Connection provides comfort, and it connects you to your numbers. Balancing your finances can provide enormous direction after loss. And the reason for that is because you gain expert guidelines. I kind of call them guardrails, think of bowling, to help you make smart choices as you begin to move forward, and you do not have to have a financial degree. You just got to stay involved and know your numbers. You will create and understand decisions that are based on what you truly value, the things that you're learning about yourself here at this conference. Because you've got to align your finances with powering your renewal. That's the whole secret. And that's why people, you know, they kind of just don't, oh, I really need to know my finances. Yes, you do. You want to stand in a place of choice, because if it hasn't been drilled into you in the last 2 days, that builds hope. And hope keeps you in the doing toward renewal. There is no more financial paralysis. Yeah, go have lunch with the girls. Go do whatever you need to do after you've balanced your numbers. And what I use is called the 50-20-30 worksheet. It is out there. It's based on a book called All Your Worth, The Ultimate Lifetime Money Plan. I don't just use this with widows. My multimillionaires love this. And college kids, you know, right? Let's teach them this, I try to, before they get into trouble, like buying their first home that they can't afford. So here's how it works. Okay, so you can see over you got 50% in core living essentials, This includes housing, credit cards, contractual obligations, and everyday essentials. 20% is financial goals. Sometimes it's debt reduction first, right? Sometimes it's building the emergency funds. We need you to have an emergency fund, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, depending on what industry you work in, okay? The last one I renamed. So 30% lifestyle wants is what we use with just every client. But for widows, I renamed it. Embrace life's fun again. Spend 30%. If you've done 50 and 20, you can make the 30% whatever you want. And I hope that you feed your soul. You figure out what is most truly essential to you, and you do it. Many times I'll have a widow who will have extra in that column, and she'll fall back into that scarcity mindset, and I'll go, no, no, no. We have that $1,900, that's extra. Oh, I know, but I could put a little on debt, or no, we've got the debt covered. Please go spend that weekend at the lake. Did you have a question? It's hard to see. Financial goals. So it's, and the worksheet is out there, so if you want to grab it, it'll show there too, but it's 20% retirement savings, and then sometimes it's 5% to other debt reduction, and then your emergency funds are down in the middle. And that's going to be after tax, so make sure you notice that up top. That's going to be net, not your gross. All right? So it's that straightforward, and it works, whether you're a widow who's 20 or 80. Okay, tips for step 3, balancing your numbers. The goal here, when you're newly widowed, and that means so many different time frames, right? There really are no real stages. They like to put you in stages and time zones, but you can take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But basically an average of about the first 3 years of widowhood, we don't want your numbers into perfect balance. There may be reasons why we're taking out a little bit more to spend a little bit more because we're stabilizing our family. If you've run your numbers in step 3, you might have a bar, that's higher than maybe it looks like it should be. But as long as you don't run out of money at age 100, we're good. Okay? Because when you know, then the decisions are easy. All right. Nope. Know that we use this formula because it's sustainable. It's safe, and it has been tested over time. It was created by a bankruptcy expert. It allows flexibility during times of financial emergency or change, aka widowhood. You will always have room to maneuver. Like I said, you got that one bar, that 1 year, maybe it's 3 years. It's probably going to be okay. You are in control, and it helps you get back to the journey of emotional well-being. It is so interconnected. I'll tell you I was at a conference at a cultural center. It was a women's expo, and across kind of diagonal from me was a hospice table. And they had an HR woman there who was part of the grief counseling. And I kind of noticed she was coming around the table, and she said, we offer grief counseling. And I'm like, obviously you're hospice, and I was like, and I realized, I was like, oh, no, I'm not your competitor. I'm after you. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, it's been proven that, women especially go into financial paralysis. They don't know. And she's like, I had no idea. No idea. So we now work together on several things. So when your money is in balance, you realign with having enough. That's what it's all about. And you move forward towards powerful conversations. Okay, so three steps on conquering financial fear, and now 3 steps moving into resilience and renewal. Because you can, because you are now financially wise, which is a fancy term for you are unlocked. When I start talking about a withdrawal strategy to fund your gap, you're like, oh, I get it. I'm open. You are unlocked because you have the basic knowledge. You begin to align your finances. You're standing in choice. It will create a mind shift, I promise you, from scarcity to abundance. Okay, powerful conversations. Every coach or anyone who's had the training knows that they cultivate courage. When you understand your situation, you're ultimately creating choice. Choice creates hope, and you are then able to take and plan for your next steps in life. You begin to feel more in control and confident during that turbulent time. Okay? Curiosity, we all know as coaches, creates the courage, those powerful questions. But you got to be open enough to be able to think and answer the questions for yourself, like you were with the stickies a little earlier. Okay? So there's 3 in particular coaching conversations that an advisor can integrate to keep moving you forward. And it's important because loss is universal, financial planning is universal, but grief is personal. And to align them, you've got to go deeper and you've got to get personal. And for widows, it takes tremendous courage and commitment to keep choosing on those days that you just don't want to. Choose a course of action. So these conversations that are specific to widows can really be powerful. So the first one, and this is from Coactive Coaching. Coactive Coaching is the coaching system that's most used to train CEOs in the Fortune 500 companies. So the one that I find as a starting point is the process conversation. It's about meeting you where you are. When you come into my office, where are you? You know, what's here? What emotions are here? And you may come in a month later and it's a total different, right? And I've got to kind of gauge what's going on, and you do too. Because widows often see themselves blocked from re-entering life. You keep your responses locked and under tight control to block those feelings. Managing and controlling it, though, takes tremendous effort, and it can leave you feeling exhausted. When you don't permit your body to discover and discharge whatever you're holding inside, you don't grow. You're not renewing. And I don't know what to use your finances for to power the renewal, okay? So this conversation allows a shift in the internal experience about your grief journey, acknowledging and naming the emotion out loud. I will never shove a tissue box at you. We call it the shut up box. It's a nice gesture, but I'd rather you sit there and work through that emotion. And it's very hard. It's very hard to hold that silence. But I remind myself that it's honoring what you're feeling, because every person in this room is creative, resourceful, and whole. You can find your own answers. All right? So as Eckhart Tolle says, rather than being your thoughts and emotions, be the awareness behind them. Okay. Fulfillment conversations, determining the rightness of choices. This is an awesome one because I often find that widows need to have permission to spend on themselves or make a decision that is most fulfilling for them. You know, we're a very giving gender, but we have to give back to ourselves. This worksheet is also, I don't normally hand this one out, but because all of you have made the commitment to come, I do have it out there, and I put it on the little round table, so you can grab one. You can do it yourself, you can do it with a friend, or you can email me, and I'm more than happy to do it with you. We can do it over the phone, okay? So the fulfillment conversation helps you discover or reaffirm what is essential to you through your exploration of your values. Again, really the sticky exercise. Grief doesn't want you to remember who you were, that princess wearing that crown when you were 8. Who was she? What did she like to do? That's what we want to use the finances for. So you're invited to pursue that, and it's all about being alive again after loss. So you want to ask yourself, besides those life basics, food, shelter, explore what else you truly need in your life to give you a life that is full of meaning, purpose, and satisfaction. And sometimes it's just anchoring in on a word, okay? And that worksheet will help you find that. With this new clarity, you can then begin to make those decisions, align them with who you are now and going forward, and then use your finances to support it. I'll give you an example here. I had a client from last year's conference. We did everything, and she had been wanting to do a spiritual direction kind of a course, and those courses run around close to $10,000, and she could not believe, that she would spend it on that. But when we ran her numbers, she had the money. And she has since done that. She lives in Jacksonville, and she is helping others. But she would not have done it if she had not seen those black and white numbers. She would not, I tell you, she would not have done it. But she did. Warmed my heart. Okay, balance conversations. So this is interesting because Carolyn talked about this. I think she had a slide up there that was from Oprah, and it was the seven, I forget what it was, but 7 ingredients of different things. But if you notice, it's basically the same. Balance is, conversations are designed to restore flow. It's not about making everything even. It's for a widow pulling through the grief and feeling that you are choosing your life moving forward, not just reacting to it. In your life these days, ask yourself, what are you saying yes to? What are you saying no to? The wheel, as you can see, certain areas like money or fun and recreation kind of shows where you're satisfied. If everything was a 10, I love when my 8 personalities, they always want to start getting it to a 10. You really don't want to do that because you can't be at a 10 in all things. You just don't have the time. No one can. So you want to see where you're off balance and then decide which one you want to begin to focus on for that year. It's kind of like when retirees come in. I'm like, okay, what's happening for this year? We talk about it in the first quarter. Same thing. Although a widow may need to do this once a quarter, every 3 months. Okay? They will sustain change by moving beyond the aimless wandering in the cul-de-sac of grief. The intention is to redefine what is possible. It's an expansive phase, and it gets your mind being creative. I don't know the answers for you, but when you see it on paper, you can go, oh, that's where I need to align my finances and move forward, okay? Again, making choices opens up the space to align your finances with what really matters. Okay, conquering financial fear and building resilience, the 3 steps, getting organized, getting the knowledge, know your numbers, run your numbers, balance your numbers. This is going to open you up. You're not going to be locked. Then you can move into the powerful conversations that build curiosity, and curiosity is what builds courage. And then you can align your finances with that. It's all about trusting your journey. No matter what happens in our lives, we always get to choose how we'll think about it. You are more resilient than you think. Like my dad said, people rose up from the hells of war. If they can do that, you can do this. And I know you can. You have the power to believe that something else is possible and have the faith. And when you unlock, you can have that faith that things can and will change. So I want to make sure that, again, 3 steps, gather the knowledge and ask for help. Talk to a certified financial planner or a certified financial transitionist. We had several of those at the last conference. It's kind of a newer designation, but it's really a good one for widows. Or just a cash flow planner. Again, for widows, it's all going to be about that cash flow. And if I said this before and I'm repeating it, I apologize. However, for a widow, especially in her first year, she's got to be reminded of it monthly, sometimes weekly, okay? That she has enough, or stabilizing that. And then you can get to where it's quarterly and then annually. But it's all about cash flow. So you discover or reaffirm what is essential based on your goals, your values. It's okay to have someone help you and kind of guide you. But your decisions have got to be based on what is most fulfilling to you, okay? Step forward to being alive again after loss. It's okay to have those feel-good moments. Stay in the doing. This does not mean staying so busy that you can't grieve, right? It's staying in the doing and taking those steps forward and owning who you are now. Okay. And then here's another book that we highly recommend for recovery and renewal. All right, so two things. One, I think they're passing out a little gift to you. I want to dedicate this gift to my very best friend of 30 years. I met her a month after my dad was killed in his car accident. We've been friends ever since, and we have coffee every single morning. Her husband came down with cancer about 3 years ago at the same time that I was kind of gearing up Wealth Care for Widows, and I didn't really mention it to her for a while, but when I did, she found it very therapeutic. She actually helped me design my logo. She helped pick the colors. She couldn't be here this weekend because she's getting her first daughter to college. So she wasn't able to be here, but she always tells me she hates when she has a trigger moment and she cries it out because I tell her tears water the growth. But what happens is she says she's like swollen for 3 days. So I saw these and I thought, well, what a nice gift, right? They're cold and hot packs. If you have little kids, you can use them for boo-boos and things like that, or you filled out my forms and you've got that massive headache and you need a warm compress. It's for warmth also, okay? I get it, guys. All right, and then lastly, there's a card going around. I want to encourage you to fill this out. Fill it out for 3 reasons. One, for yourself. Just like the stickies, put down those 3 most pressing financial concerns just so that you're aware of it, so your mind can begin to find those solutions. You can take this card back to your own financial advisor and say, hey, I think we need to revisit a couple things. Or, hey, why didn't you ever do this? Okay? Give them that chance. They have the software. And then thirdly, if you don't have someone to work with, please reach out to me. I have so many resources, and sometimes it's just, I'll get an email from a conference and it's 4 or 5 months later, and just being able to point you in the right direction, a 15-minute phone call or just the email response back that someone took the time to care can do enormous good, okay? So please reach out to me. It's my commitment to you for attending this seminar. It's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? If you want to talk to me later, that's fine. I know it's a little taboo to kind of start jumping into finances. I know Dr. Maxino earlier was talking with people about moving on and keeping, the importance of maybe sometimes keeping finances separate. So that's a big one for widows who are going back out there and renewing. If you have questions about that, I can give you some best practices. Anybody? Well, I must have done my job. Okay, yeah. Did you want to come to the mic or? Yes. So what you're talking about, so the question was, is it true that it gets more expensive as we age? Absolutely. So that's called the cost of living. The biggest areas that are growing right now are college, prescriptions, and groceries. Groceries are going up higher than the current college inflation rate, so well over 9%. Did that answer your question? Oh, yes. So that's going to vary for different people. Okay, so in your 50s or 50 to 64 is going to be probably your most expensive years because it's just kind of the way the health system works. It costs more to insure you. At 65, most people are going to be eligible for Medicare, so you will see a drop. Depending on your health, 65 to usually what I see about 75, 76. It's pretty plateaued. You may have copays and things like that. But once you start getting, unless you have a health issue, around 76, the prescriptions kind of escalates, and people start going into what we call the donut hole, and they have to start paying outright for certain meds, or they've got to shop it out. So yes, there are decades that are a little bit more expensive. Any other questions? Yeah? Okay. Yes. Okay, so what you're talking about is a direct rollover. So I'm very visual. And so I tell people, think of like a big, large cardboard box. That's the 401k. And over here, you can open or have a traditional IRA. You can roll that money into the smaller box or your IRA as long as it goes direct and you do not touch the money. You can also take a check, but you got to make sure it gets in the box within 60 days. Okay? For widows who are under 59 and a half, there in my binder in the back, there is a blog. Of course, you can visit the blog, the website. If you're under 59 and a half, you do want to be careful about rolling it into your own IRA. You want to roll it into what they call a beneficiary IRA. And the reason for this is if you're under 59 and a half and it's in your IRA and you take out money, this is one of the biggest mistakes we see and it cannot be reversed. If you roll it into your own IRA, you're under 59 and a half, you take out $20,000, you're going to have a 10% penalty. It'll say beneficiary IRA. Okay, and the paperwork that you have to fill out will say that. So thank you for mentioning that because that is one of the number one mistakes that widows make. They hear, oh yeah, I'm going to roll it, I'm not going to pay tax, and they put it in their own IRA. You got to get it into that beneficiary IRA. Yes, but I do see mistakes. As a branch manager, I do use usually newer advisors. It's not that they meant to make a mistake, it just slips their mind because there's so much to know. Okay? Sure. Any other questions? Everybody good? Okay. Well, thank you. One more. Oh, I'm sorry. They're going to make you go to the mic.
What I hear as a leader of Birmingham is a financial Social Security Administration rules and regulations. And who do we get advice from? In my state, we have a certified, only person in the state qualified to come and talk about all the rules and regulations for widows, and he has a tender spot in his heart for widows.
Okay.
So we've invited him to our club, but I'm thinking of all these other ladies asking this question. What would you say?
Okay, so usually, if we have, so there is usually someone at the local Social Security office that the office will send out to talk to different groups. It's usually a senior advisor, and they can do that. So I don't know what's particular in, what state are you from? Oh, he's a wealth advisor. Okay. All right. So yes. It's finding that right person that can give you that information. Widows who work with us and I'm sure he would do the same. If you have a phone, I tell people you're never going to fill out a form again alone. You're never going to go to a meeting alone. If you have an iPhone or you can FaceTime, you're just going to take me with you. Okay, so you want to feel your advisor out. Ask them, hey, I got to go. Can you meet me there? If it's local, I go to the local office with my widow because it is very confusing. And sometimes they'll give you advice. This is what I find. I try to meet with the same person in our local area. They'll give you advice, but they don't know all the other stuff. So they think they're giving you the right, but sometimes they're not. That's right. That's right. Yes. I do try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt because I believe in good people. But you are right, yes. And again, sometimes it's just they just don't really know. They don't know all the other stuff that maybe, hey, you do have enough and you don't need to take your benefits at 60. You really should wait till 70. They don't know that. Maybe you're having a really bad day and you're really sad and you're feeling scarcity mindset. Oh yeah, just take it at 60. Well, you just took a 30% reduction in benefits. Okay? Yeah. So there's always special circumstances. Yeah, call again. If you hear that voice telling you something doesn't sound right from what I've heard before, go back. Okay, ask for someone else. Okay, anybody else? That's most important. You have to feel comfortable with who you're working with, that you're not being talked at, you're being talked with. You just asked that question. You just rehearsed it. Yeah. Sometimes it depends on what's in his title. That would be a great question. If you want to email me and just give me his name and title, I could tell you that. Please email me. It's so simple for me to, I do this stuff every day. It takes me 2 minutes to email you back. Okay? Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.